Description, I think it's Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
And
I almost assumed that when I was told there was a note out. He was the one that was asking about if he got paid for mileage.
correct. Yeah, that's juror 3-1.
So obviously we're going to move forward, this removed from the panel without saying, but I'm concerned that can we speak to her to make sure that
We can.
And then, is there a way to, I don't know if you want to do it as a group or individually, to make sure he hasn't talked to anyone else? Because she just happened to luckily write a note.
I think if you're asking to ask all the jurors if they spoke with anyone about the case, contrary to the court's instructions, I think we have to call them out individually.
Okay.
Perhaps we don't, but that might be the easier way to do it.
Yeah, I'd prefer that, because I don't know if in a group, they may feel that they're confined with.
Mr. Parkdale?
And, Your Honor, I think perhaps the court should bring Mr. Smith out before we do that and see if Mr. Smith agrees or disagrees with that characterization of what occurred.
Well, and what if he says he did not? I think that's why we probably have to bring out the other jurors.
I agree. I know that the juror that sent the note is our alternate
Right.
back.
Right. She's the second alternate.
Correct. So all we have is her version of what occurred in a vacuum. And I've never
All right,
had
well, we
this
can
happen.
bring out Mr. Smith first, and then we can bring out the other jurors individually.
And Judge, also, can you ask him if he's talked to anyone else?
Right.
I'm assuming we're going to strike him from the panel, but.
It sounds like that's probably what's going to happen.
You don't want them to remain standing in the jury box when you talk to them? Or are you going to walk?
No, they can be seated. I just want to bring out Mr. Smith myself.
Okay, right. Jury. Just have a seat right here. Have a seat.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Go ahead.
Mr. Smith, the reason I brought you out is because I was made aware that you may have discussed some of your feelings about the case yesterday with another juror, so I just wanted to ask you about that. Do you recall speaking with another juror and just telling the other juror anything about the case and how you felt about it?
Juror asked me a question
Right.
on the way out of the elevator, it was a
Okay.
passing comment, so I didn't consider it a discussion.
Okay. Did you just tell the other juror anything about, like, if you had made up your mind about the case or anything like that?
No, I think the comment that I made, she misunderstood it to me, that it was a passing comment when we came out of the elevator, so I explained to her later that, no, that's not what I was saying, she misunderstood it.
Okay. Did you speak with any other jurors in that type of manner about the case? No one else asked you how you feel or anything like that?
No.
And you didn't tell anybody else how you feel?
No, I
Okay.
didn't say a thing. The conversation was about coming in the process of coming to court.
Right.
And then on the way out of the elevator, there was a comment made, and I responded with, I think I just responded with a couple words, but she came to me later on and said, well, I was concerned about that. I was like,
Do you remember what you said to her?
She explained what she thought. I was like, no, that's not what I meant.
Do you remember what she thinks you said to her? Did she tell you?
She had the impression that I had already made up my mind. And I
Okay.
explained to her, like, no, that's not what I was saying. I said, what I was saying is that I am still receiving information, which is why I take the number of notes that I take.
Okay.
So she said she understood.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mr. Fleshman, do you have any questions of Mr. Smith?
Can we read the note to him?
Sure. Okay, here's the note that I was given. This morning, one of the jurors, I apologize for not knowing his name, walked with me from the parking lot. It was really the first time I spoke with him.
He is the black man in the front row, second from the left. When we got to the courthouse, he spoke to me about the case and said he did not need to hear any more testimony because he knew right from the very beginning that the defendant did what he was accused of. At that time, I did not get into any discussion with him. It bothered me as the day went on, and I asked to speak with him when we got into the juror's room and told him he needed to listen to all the evidence before making a decision. He again told me he heard all he needed to make a decision. This made me feel very uncomfortable, and as the day went on, I became very upset by this. I did not feel I could sit in on deliberations with him and did not feel he should be part of the jury as he has gone against all your instructions not to discuss the case with anyone, including fellow jurors. So that's what you defined.
That is a complete misrepresentation. There was nothing. That is a complete misrepresentation. There was, as I said, she misunderstood a comment that I made as we were walking out of the elevator. I explained to her when she spoke to me in the back that no, I have to make up my mind anyway. I said this has been a process, which is why I take the number of notes that I do to make sure that I have all the information. I said, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. So that was a complete mischaracterization.
Okay. All right. Mr. Fleshman, any questions?
Yeah, just a few. I just want to, because obviously it's a serious case, so I want to.
Which is what I said from the outset of the case.
Are you still able to presume Mr. Dumercy to be innocent?
Absolutely.
Okay. What portion of that, because that is a striking note, I guess what portion of that is wrong? Yeah, what portion of that note is wrong?
All of it. It was a mischaracterization of I don't even remember having that much discussion with her. We were walking from the parking lot. So she misunderstood. She took it completely the wrong way, which was actually surprising to me when she asked me about it, because I didn't think anything more of it.
And was anyone, other jurors with you or her?
No, she was walking from the parking lot.
Did you know?
Why I'm surprised that this even got to the level of even being a concern.
Do you know if she spoke to anyone else?
I don't know. Yeah. You have to ask her.
Okay. That's all I have here.
Mr. Parnell, do you have any questions?
Sir, you said that it was you made a comment to her. Do you recall generally what the comment was when you were getting out that you think she might have misinterpreted?
I actually don't. Like I said, it was a passing comment when I stepped off the elevator. We would walk from the parking lot into, because we were rushing, we came up here together, and then we both forgot to go sign in and stamp our tickets and went back down. And she said something about the process, and I think I referred to it, well, I'm like, well, it is what it is, or something to that effect. But I was speaking about process. So I really don't understand how she completely mischaracterized or got the interpretation that I made up my mind about anything. I have probably the most extensive notes of any juror. So I really don't understand where that came from. And I really don't understand why she would describe it in such a way that is complete misrepresentation.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Okay. Mr. Smith, let me just have you wait out in the hallway just for a few minutes, and then we just want to try to address this a little bit to make sure everything's okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Also, Your Honor, can we approach?
Sure.
Thank you for everyone.
I'm
going to get some
And
understanding.
another thing,
Yes, sir.
From my recollection, I didn't even initiate the discussion. She just walked up next to me when we were at the corner. So, which is even further reason why I don't understand why she made this appear to be more than what it is.
Okay. All right. So let me just have you wait outside just for a few minutes. And we'll address it. Thank you very much.
Getting a deputy this understanding with them because they're going to be exposed.
Are there other jurors out in the hallway, then?
Not jurors yet, but
Right.
there's other people.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, Dave, if you could bring Jersey Donovan back out.
I have a deputy with them, so
Okay.
he's not there.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Good morning, Ms. Donovan.
Good morning.
Ms. Donovan, I have a note that you provided this evening, and I just wanted to ask you, Have you said anything to the other jurors about this?
I have not.
Do you know if Mr. Smith, who's the juror that you described in your note, has said anything in your presence to the other jurors about it? Okay. And of course, you know what you wrote in the note. Is that completely accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mr. Fleischman, do you have any questions of Ms. Donnelly?
Well, do you mind if I ask her? That's fine.
Sure.
Is what you wrote on there, that's verbatim what he said, or is close to it?
It's pretty close to it, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything.
Mr. Parnfield or Mr. Brown, do you have any questions?
Man, do you recall how the conversation with Mr. Smith began?
Yes, I do.
How did it begin?
We walked in from the parking garage together. We just had like a normal talk about Google Maps and whatever. And then we came upstairs. Both of us forgot to sign in, so we went down together to sign in. And on the way back up on the elevator, I'm not really sure. Some of the people that are on the bench were in the elevator with us. And I was like, I hope he doesn't say anything and whatever. So we got out, and he said he had been in the elevator with them before. And they said to him, thank you for your civic duty. And then he said to me, right outside the elevator, he said, you know, this is just done. He goes, from the beginning, he goes, I knew right from opening statements that this was done, that he didn't say guilty, but he led me to believe that that's what he wanted. And it really bothered me because I know we're not supposed to talk about it. And I mean, like, that kind of influenced my mind somewhat. So I asked to speak with him, and I just wanted to say to him, you need to, like, have an open mind. You can't make this decision based on not hearing all the evidence. And he said, my mind's made up. I know. But I knew from the beginning.
Did he say anything to you about notes that he was taking or anything like that?
No, he did not.
Did you have anything about, or did you talk about this conversation with any of the other jurors?
I did not.
And you told us now that Mr. Smith indicated to you that he spoke to some of the family members? Or some of the people on the bench?
They were in he didn't speak to them. He said when he was on the elevator, once they were with him, and when he walked out, they said, thank you for your civic duty.
Okay.
Actually, he said, they said, thank you for your civil duty, and he said they meant civic duty. I mean, verbatim what he said to me.
Okay. Was that something that was concerning to you, or because that wasn't?
No, that didn't. Well, I mean, that didn't really bother me. That was the first thing he said to me, and then went into the rest of it. And I mean, I just feel like he's not going to be a fair juror. I'm sorry. And it took a lot for me to do that.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Okay. All right. Let me just advise you.
Can I just say one other thing?
Sure.
When you took him out of the room in there,
Yes.
of course everyone was like saying whatever, and some of the comments made me think that he had said stuff to other people,
Okay.
other jurors.
But can we ask her what the other comments were?
They were just, I mean, they were like, you know, maybe he was recording it, maybe like he said something to someone and they found out about it. So I was just like sitting there like, okay, like I'm not the only one who is thinking that way. Well, I mean, I know it, I'm not thinking that way.
Okay, so let me have you do this. I'm going to put you back in the jury room. Please don't discuss what we
No, I wouldn't.
asked you out here. Don't discuss anything about Mr. Smith with the other jurors.
Mm-hmm.
Just if they ask you, just say, you know,
Just
I
say I
don't know.
can't talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem saying that, really.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, I think we need to bring out the other jurors and ask them if anybody, including Mr. Smith, has said, I don't know if you're all going to ask, but it sounds to me, based on this juror's statement, that I should release Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Parnfield, do you agree?
Respectfully, I disagree. I think that that juror, that alternate juror, seems to have a lot of perceptions of conversations that aren't necessarily borne out by what the individuals say. When Mr. Smith was responding to the court's questions, Mr. Smith emphatically denied her accusations. He explained pretty much point by point what his entire statements with her. He's been taking copious notes. If he's already made up his mind, why would he be taking copious notes? I believe the deputy had to provide him a second notepad during the course of the trial. She seems to think that everyone has already decided it based off of nothing. I don't think that her...
Well, I don't think she said that she thinks everyone, all the jurors have decided.
She said that she thought that Mr. Smith had spoken to the other jurors. Something he...
And that's why I'm going to bring out the other jurors and ask them.
Well, my position is that Mr. Smith emphatically denies. I think that it is very clear that Mr. Smith and Ms. Donovan have a personality conflict. And I think that might be what's driving this situation more than Mr. Smith doing anything inappropriate, because Mr. Smith, again, he was emphatically denied the accusations, and he was correct when he says he's the one that's been taking the most notes. And if he had already decided it from opening statement, he wouldn't be taking 2 notepads worth of notes.
That may or may not be true. In any event, I think we should bring out the other jurors and ask them. I don't know if we can do it individually or if we need to do it.
Well, I'm asking individually because of the nature of what is alleged here, especially after what this last juror just said.
Okay. Okay, based on that, I'm confident that the other jurors have not been asked that question by Mr. Smith or have not heard anything about that. So, Mr. Fleischman, what is your request going to be regarding Mr. Smith?
So I'm reading one case. Just
Okay.
give me 1 second. Okay, so on Mr. Smith, I am requesting the court strike him from the panel.
Okay. Mr. Cornfield?
Your Honor, I don't believe that there is a basis to strike Mr. Smith from the panel. I believe that if the court makes a credibility finding between the two, Juror Donovan, the alternate juror, who, just for the record, indicated during voir dire that she previously sat on a mistrial or mistried case, indicated something completely contrary to what Mr. Smith indicated. Mr. Smith emphatically denied her accusations. Mr. Smith explained that he had been taking copious notes, which he has been throughout the course of the trial, which would negate the accusation that she made. And then when she was colloquied by the court, she also orally said that she believed that he had spoken to other jurors, a fact which every single juror denied. So we would say that he has not committed misconduct. He is an impaneled juror and he should not be stricken. She is an alternate. We would ask that she at this point be stricken and she would be removed from the jury room so that she couldn't continue to contaminate the jury, basically.
Well, I've instructed her not to discuss anything about this with the other jurors, so I am going to grant the defense request to strike Mr. Smith. I'm not saying that he did exactly what he's being accused of doing. I think it is possibly a credibility determination that needs to be made, which I really can't make under these circumstances. I think in the abundance of caution, I have to strike him. The defense has requested it. And, even if some of what he said is accurate, I just don't think it would be fair to Mr. Dumercy to keep him on the jury. Mr. Dumercy, let me just ask you, is it also your wish for the court to strike juror number 3-1, Mr. Smith?
That's correct.
Okay. So I am going to strike Mr. Smith, and that would then move the first alternate, which would be as our 12th juror. And Ms. Donovan is still just an alternate. Okay? So, yes.
Also, I need to, and I'm also asking the court to, this is on behalf of Mr. Dumercy, to grant a mistrial by way of striking the entire panel. I know that we've just individually voir dired them, but I believe I do need to raise this.
Okay.
Based on the statements of the juror that wrote the note, it appears that although they've said no jurors have spoken to them directly in regards to an outcome or perceived outcome of the case, based on what she heard the jurors say or their affect, the way they acted when Mr. Smith was called out from the juror room. It's our position that he may have poisoned the entire panel, whether it's through his behavior or comments that may have overheard. And Mr. Dumercy can no longer receive a fair trial with an impartial jury, which would violate both the Florida and United States Constitution.
Okay,
So.
I'm going to deny that request. I have heard from these jurors that make me think that. Okay, so Dave, why don't we bring Mr. Smith back in? And I've got his, let me give you his certificate to hand him.
When we together, is the property?
Yes, as well. Why don't you just go in there and get
Your Honor, while we're waiting for Mr. Smith, we would ask that Ms. Donovan also be excused at this time because there's a danger, the state is concerned that there's a danger that once Mr. Smith is removed and not able to sit through the closing arguments, it will cause the jury to want to know what was going on, and we're afraid that since Ms. Smith is or Ms. Donovan is an alternate at this point anyway, we're in closing arguments, we would rather just proceed with closing arguments and send the jury back without having to worry about her being part of the jury or talking to them or making any additional comments to the jurors.
Judge, we would object.
And there's been nothing she has said that would show prejudice against either side. And she just merely reported the fact that a juror had already apparently, in light most favorable to her testimony, formed an opinion about the case and from the beginning did not presume the defendant to be innocent, which violates the initial oath that the veneer takes.
The only thing I did remember hearing her testify about was that what he said to her affected her in some fashion.
Right.
I'm not sure what fashion that was.
But she also, I think in her note, she also indicated she couldn't sit in the back with him. She didn't want to be around him.
Right.
So it's a grave concern that she's going to discuss anything, even if we take a 5-minute restroom break. The state doesn't want her to talk to them about anything. And she's
Well,
the
she is the
second
second
alternate.
alternate, so we're about to do closings and then this case is going to the jury. So
Right.
it's not like I'm concerned an alternate is going to be needed.
Right.
So she's really not on the jury that's going to hear the case when she ultimately, when they ultimately deliberate. So I think in abundance of caution, I am going to strike her as well.
Because that would be over our objection.
I understand that. She's the only other juror that has been exposed to whatever she claims was said to her. So, and it certainly did seem to affect her greatly. So, and of course, if some juror falls ill between now and deliberations, that's going to cause a mistrial. So, but hopefully that's not going to happen. So, Dave, let's bring in Mr. Smith first, and then we'll bring in Ms. Donovan next. So, Lorraine, I'm going to need a certificate for Ms. Donovan as well. Mr. Smith, please sit. In the abundance of caution, just because, things have been said, we don't know what's accurate, what's not accurate, but I just don't want to have you sit as a juror in the case. I just, in fairness to you and everybody else, I just don't want it to be a problem. So I'm going to excuse you from jury service with my great thanks. I have a certificate for you, and, I'm sorry that this occurred in the way that it did. I'm not finding any fault with you. I just don't want there to be any issue that arises from it. So with my great thanks for all the time that you've spent, I know you were taking a lot of notes.
Again, I thank you for your service and hope you have a great day. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Ms. Donovan, I just want to thank you for bringing to the board's attention what you did. And because we're going to be going into deliberation right after a closing argument, you are our alternate. And so, because all of the jurors are here, we won't have to have you deliberate.
Okay.
So, with my thanks, I'm going to discharge you now.
Okay.
And I do have a certificate for you. And it's with a great deal of thanks that you spent all this time with us. You did a great job for us. And again, thank you for being a juror in our case. And thank you for bringing to the board's attention what you did. It's very
And
important.
I appreciate that you looked into it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. This way?
Yes, please. Yeah. Hey, are we ready to do our closing arguments? Okay.
I just want to get a
Hold on,
copy of the
hold on.
instructions.
Sorry.
I just want to get a copy of the jury instructions.
She did? Oh, so this is my copy.
It's your copy.
Okay. So you have your copy.
Jury instructions?
No, he means copy of the letter.
I
Yeah.
have the letter, I think he wants the
He wants
jury
jury
instructions.
instructions.
You have to do an extra copy.